recorder for this is the special meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for August 25th, 2014.
Board Member Bennett.
Here.
Board Member Tesler.
Present.
Board Member Nanke.
Here.
Board Member Clausen.
Here.
Board Member Dickey.
Here.
Board Member Rogers.
Here.
Board Member Benars.
Here.
Board Member Clem.
Here.
Chair Peterson.
Here. Thank you. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need an approval of the special meeting agenda. Member Bennett, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. I move the agency approve the special meeting agenda for April 25th.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Bennett and seconded by Member Benars to move the approval of the special meeting agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. We have time now for public comment. I see that no one has signed up. Is there anyone here today who wanted to speak on public comment on an agenda item other than public hearings that has to do with the Urban Renewal Agency? All right, I see none. And now we have action items. Member Bennett, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. I move the agency approve the incentive fee calculation of the management fee for the Salem Convention Center for the 3-year period commencing July 1st, 2014 through July 1st, 2017.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Bennett and seconded by Member Benars. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, this is a fee system that was developed in 2008. It comes up every 3 years for renewal. It is a base fee plus incentive fee in working particularly with folks over at the Convention Center and the Grand Hotel for their management and leadership. I think we can only say that so far, whatever they're doing right. This is one of the few convention centers to open and stay in the black as long as this one has and appears to be continuing. So I think it's a worthwhile way of compensating those who are responsible.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. It's been moved and seconded, moved by Member Bennett and seconded by Member Benars to approve the staff recommendation for the Salem Convention Center incentive fee calculation. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I draw your attention, there is an information report in the packet for the Urban Renewal Agency. And if there's no further business for the Urban Renewal Agency, we are adjourned. All right. I will now call to order the meeting for the Salem City Council for August 25th, 2014. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Bennett.
Here.
Councillor Tesler.
Present.
Councillor Nanke.
Here.
Councillor Clausen.
Here.
Councillor Dickey.
Here.
Councillor Rogers.
Here.
Councillor Benars.
Here.
Councillor Clem.
Here.
Mayor Peterson.
Here. Thank you. We will open with the approval of additions and deletions to the agenda. Councillor Bennett, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. I move the additions, deletions, and revisions to the council agenda.
Second.
Madam Mayor, this just moves agenda item 4D to special orders of business as agenda item 5A.
move 7D to
Special orders of business.
special orders of business. Thank you. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Benars. Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We now have time for city council and city manager comment. This is often a favorite time for the evening to discuss some things that have happened and we'd like to share. Councillor Bennett, I see your hand up.
I'm up. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilors, I read with real concern the decision by the state legislature to seriously, I believe, cut into the state library program, particularly that area that deals in archives that are particularly popular with folks who come to town to do genealogical research and other kinds of archival research. And with that in mind, I'm hopeful that at least because we have a really great library, that we can take a look at perhaps serving either to house or to take on that program. It represents a substantial addition to tourism in the town. That genealogical tourism is a particularly popular area. And I'm hoping the manager and the librarian can take a look and talk with those folks about kind of what's going to happen to that collection to make sure it's available to the public and make sure we continue to have people coming to town to use it.
Thank you, Councillor. We are gathering some data. Our library administrator has been talking with the people who are involved to get more information from them. And then, we'll process that with City Council as we learn more.
Great. I'm glad you're working on it. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'll recall, about, 4 or 5 months ago, the city received a grant to have a mental health unit that would be part of the police department that would go out on particular calls. And I was just wanting to know if we could get an update on that. I'm just curious to know how that's going now that it's been in place for several months.
And Chief Moore is here to respond.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jerry Moore, Chief of Police. Councilor Dickey is absolutely right. Marion County and Salem, City of Salem went in for a grant which went into effect about 4 months ago, and it was regarding mobile crisis response. If you recall, we had a crisis outreach response team which began in 2011, which allowed police officers to follow up on repeat folks who had mental health issues and try and deal with the issues before they got out of hand and refer them to some mental health specialists. Last May, we began the mobile crisis response team, and that is a situation where either a deputy or a Salem police officer rides with a mental health worker and actually responds as the first responders to mental health calls. Since May, they've responded to approximately 233 calls that patrol officers would have needed to deal with. They responded as first responders, and that is for all of Marion County, but 62% of the calls were in the city of Salem. Some of the calls were mental health situations, welfare checks, or disturbances that people in mental health crises were involved in. The good thing about this is we've been able to interact with these folks and provide them services or do a peace officer hold on them rather than take them to jail, which has been a real positive thing. So we believe that the program has been very successful to date, and the officers that are involved have done a great job in alleviating some of the pressure that would normally go to patrol officers.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I want to say especially how much I appreciate the work that our city and our city police are doing in that regard. I think that a city is judged by a lot of ways, and certainly one of them is how we treat people who are in need or in fragile situations, and I really applaud you and the department for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Other council comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to move along to the consent calendar. Excuse me, we're going to move along to public comment. I know, why do I always brush over that? I don't mean to, because look, we have a whole long list, which I'm very pleased about, and I really do reiterate how happy I am to see people who've taken time to come down. So what we usually do is use both podiums, and I'll call 2 names at a time. And remember that the first, you have 3 minutes, and after 2 minutes, the amber light will come on, and at the end of 3 minutes, the red light comes on. So appreciate your help with keeping to the time frame. We start with Roger Huser and with Matthew Foley.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, and friends. Roger Heuser, 1395 High Street, Ward 2. I just want to talk a little bit about parking. I'm downtown every day except Sundays, and I always find parking, usually down there by Rite Aid or Kohl's or something like that. Every now and then I use the parking garage, but not very often. Since I'm a young guy, I don't mind walking 4 or 5 blocks. I don't have to park right in front of Penny's or something like that. But I think this is a non-problem. I think it'd be better to spend our time, your time, trying to find more businesses down there. We have a lot of vacancies down there, and the vacancies are what really concerns me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Mayor, my name is Matthew Foley. Thank you. I actually have an office downtown in the Reed Opera House, and I work out of there doing photography and video. My issue and my concern with it is I'm wondering if there's a way to maybe be a little more aware of keeping the rules in check, because like last week outside of the business, we had a guy in a camper trailer who was there for 6 days straight. I don't mind having some customer parking all day, but when you got a camper trailer sitting in front of a downtown spot and he's sleeping in it, that cuts into the customers that actually could show up and do business there. And, you know, I wind up having to take some of that cost that I see once a year and having to put it back on my customers, because my business is feast and famine. You know, there's only so many weddings and whatnot that could take place. And thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your testimony. Are there any questions from counselors? All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming down. I see Dino Vinti and Jim Vu have signed up on the same line. Did you each want to address the council? You're certainly welcome to.
Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. Good.
Well, I've been picked to represent a group of over 30 downtown businesses, a lot of which are right in the core of downtown. So I'd like to read our little statement here. And we are a group of downtown Salem business and building owners. We've been meeting since June, seeking a downtown parking solution. Our goal is to create a long-term holistic solution that will help give customers a positive downtown experience. Recognizing that a long-term solution will take time, we are asking for some immediate changes that will improve the current parking situation for our customers. The goals of these recommendations are to encourage 2 behaviors. First, to increase the turnover of on-street parking. Second, encourage the use of parking garages. We have 5 recommendations we would like to see implemented immediately. First, install on-street signs that put a 3-hour time limit for on-street parking within the downtown parking district. Second, make it easy for those waiting to purchase a permit. 2 ideas to make it easier are online permit purchase or allowing the employees to go through their employer to purchase the permit. Number 3, work with downtown business owners to create low-cost, safe off-street parking options for employees and residents. We've all come to the conclusion that there's definitely a bottleneck in the turnover in parking because of these 2 reasons. 4, advertise the parking garages are free and unlimited for customers. Share the message that anywhere downtown, you're only 3 blocks away from a parking garage. So when you really look at where those structures are, they're really close to, most of the downtown businesses. Create an ordinance that discourages residents and employees from moving their cars from one on-street parking space every 3 hours. We hope this short-term solution will improve the current parking problem in downtown and give some relief to businesses while we work together to build a holistic, long-term solution. And I've got these documents signed, and I can gladly hand them over to whoever's looking for them.
There we are. Thank you. We appreciate your testimony and the unity that you're showing. I want to be sure to see if there are questions from councilors, and then also to ask Mr. Vu if he'd like to speak as well. Councilors, do you have any questions right now for Dino Vinti? I see several hands up. You're a popular speaker. All right, we're going to start over here. Rich Clausen, Councilor Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you all for meeting and looking at this and discussing this. I love to see a group of downtown people that are affected really stepping up and taking a leadership role on this, because I'll tell you what, that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for feedbacks for something that's going to work for you guys that stake your businesses down there. I love these suggestions. It's funny, the free parking in the garages and advertising it. I was walking down and I was driving to park in the Schmeketa Parkade with my family, and I looked at that and I said, you know, if I was from out of town, I would have no idea that's free. I would expect to pay to pull in there, and it was an interesting thought to hear you guys say that. But the real question I had was there some talk about what an ordinance might look like to discourage people from moving? Because I know when I was doing business downtown, you know, I'll admit I was a culprit. I park and then, oh, I got to move in 2 hours. You know, this was back before the change. So was there some discussion about that, a direction, or is it more kind of
Well, I think we
thinking it
felt
out
that
still?
if we offered a really affordable parking permit and encouraged them to park and make it affordable to park in the structures, and in that maybe permit process, that's articulated that this is where you park and this is, you know, the only place you can park, and, you know, discouraging that 3-hour turnover. Because then even one of the things that we had discussed is, you know, when they purchase these permits, encourage them to park there even when they're not working. Let them use those permits to park in those parkades. They're empty way over, you know, half the time, more than half empty. So let's just encourage them to, you know, almost own those parking spaces. That's your permit, park there anytime you're downtown. So that was kind of how we were thinking that would be addressed.
Was there any, if I may, Mayor, was there any discussion about block face parking and just blanket, you know, no
As far
parking
as-
for more than 2 hours within the downtown core, as opposed to being able to shuffle from one block face to another? Or do you understand? Because that was part of what I think happened before is, you know, I'd
Well,
park on State Street
I
and then
think,
move around.
you know, some of
a couple
these
streets.
issues I think will be discovered. I think the first problem is really, you know, getting the residents and the employees into those parkades, and then really assess what those issues are on each of those block faces to decide whether or not we want to let somebody move from one block to the next. You know, I think we've got to maybe take that first step, see how that turn rate increases, and then, you know, maybe increments, you know, solutions, you know, for, you know, a more holistic answer.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, I know there are several hands up over here. I think Councilor Dickey, and then Councilor Benars, and then Councilor Clem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for coming down too. I appreciate that you are here and you're able to speak to some of your perspective on the challenges with the parking, and that's actually my question. I'd like to know if you could just kind of share a little bit of any of the changes that have happened since we have implemented the parking changes and how that's affected your businesses.
Well, yeah, we've all almost agree unanimously, you know, people standing behind me here, and almost everybody that signed that petition. And if you look at those 32 businesses, they're mostly, you know, storefronts, you know, and they're right in the core. And there's been a bottleneck, you know, it's just almost come to a stranglehold downtown. And it's amazing. You can circle the blocks downtown and it's packed. And then you go into the parkades and they're empty.
All right, Councilor Benars.
If I may, I have actually 3 different directions to go with my question. First off, I see such a great group of individuals down here represented in businesses. My question has to do with, are you representative of more businesses in downtown other than the 32 signatures that you have?
I don't have that answer. I know we reached out and.
Hope you have a comment on that. I'm actually. I signed up to speak. I'm Charles Johnson, and my wife Ann and I have two businesses downtown. One is the French Unicorn, and the second is Napoleon's, which has been closed for a while, but hopefully will reopen next month. And I actually signed up to speak, so I'd probably just take care of that now. But the issue is clearly, we've talked to a lot of people. We're downtown all the time, and there's been businesses that have gone out of business specifically. Good Things, which was a store in the Reed Opera House that used furniture, it really impacted him, this unlimited parking. And it doesn't make sense. Who really needs to park on the street all day downtown? I know it passed, and I think the experiment failed. And so, you know, if somebody needs to park all day, I mean, who would need to do that? A business owner or a shopper? I mean, the parkades are for that. If somebody needs to be down there, or a permit, if they're doing construction, they get a permit. But the average person doesn't need to park there. So what's happening is, it's employees, it's maybe business people, but it's not the customers, which we need to have turnover. So there's no question that we represent more. It really obviously to me needs to be changed, and especially with the fall and the holidays, I think time is of the essence, and I don't think that, I represent a lot of people, it's not just us. We've been downtown for a number of years. The 2-hour parking actually was a little short. My wife Ann and I always thought that 3 hours was more humane. You know, you want to get something to eat, and then she would have people come in her store and say, gosh, I'd love to shop, but I got 10 minutes. And I'll come back, but then did they really come back? So I think 3 hours is reasonable, and if people are not, like as Dino said, rotating and moving from one place to another, I really think it'll solve it. The current is way worse than the 2-hour was. So I think 3 hours is a reasonable thing without making a huge list of rules and regs to get it implemented, and I don't think the cost would be very much to do those signs.
Thank you. That question was more out of just to make sure that if we implement something, that there's not another petition, and if that other petition comes up and says, we don't want time limits downtown, that we have the support of individuals in downtown to say, we really don't want to have, or we do want some time limits, rather.
One comment. I would say, I go to Portland periodically and shop, and if somebody said, would you like to sign this petition for free parking in downtown Portland? I might sign it. So in other words, this experiment, and you get people this, but I think truly the people that this most affects, the downtown businesses, would clearly be in favor of rotation of the parking space.
Thank you. Dino, you had something.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
thank you,
all
Mr.
we've
Johnson.
brought forward to you were those short-term solutions, and, you know, we're asking to participate, you know, in a longer-term study that brings, you know, a long-term solution there. So again, it's the residents and it's the employees, getting them affordable parking, encouraging them to park in those parkades is really the big message we're sending today, as well as, you know, work with us and we'll work with you on a longer-term solution.
Just a few weeks ago, we set some parking rates for the parking structures and for the annual. And we do that, it's based on staff recommendation, goes and looks at the use, so it's based on demand. One of the statements that I've heard from people is saying is that drop the rate of the monthly parking permit so that it becomes affordable to those individuals who are only working 30 hours a week, so they can afford a parking stall in the building, or perhaps bracket several together for a business so that it goes through the business rather than the individual. What's your comment about in reference to lowering the tax, or lowering the monthly permit fee for stalls to get them more affordable to people?
For anybody or just employees and residents?
That's the question.
Well, I think initially, or the first step would be employees and residents. And we're talking something, you know, as affordable as possible. We understand that there's different demands and different structures. So we're looking for maybe a median price around 20, some cheaper, some more expensive, depending on that parking structure. But really making it, you know, almost not even a thought to the employee, or even better yet, you know, anybody who wants to move downtown. You know, we don't want to prevent them from having to move downtown because they got to purchase a $70 or $80 or $100 monthly parking permit. We want to encourage, you know, people to come live, work, and play downtown.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, this is by far the most important question that I had, and that has to do with the 2-hour or 3-hour time limited. We went from 2-hour limit on parking. We're talking tonight about a 3-hour time limit. What's your opinion about the 2 versus 3 hour versus it was 4 hours in the Christmas season here, 2 years ago?
Speaking for my business, 2-hour works great, but I'm just not representing myself.
Yeah,
I think there's a consensus here that a 3-hour period gives a little bit more time. When you think about it, who's going to be downtown for more than 3 hours?
somebody who's camping out.
Exactly. And yeah, 2 hours, we might put people in situations where they're hurrying to get in and out.
It's still turnover. You mentioned one of your two goals was to help to turnover, and two is to get people into the parking structures. Your two goals. And
Yes.
so by doing 2 hours, you're doing that turnover. It's pushing the issue. In the parking study, it shows that the average individual is downtown roughly an hour and a half per stall.
So that gives them
Average.
more than enough time.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I know that Councillor Clem had a question, then I want to move back to Mr. Vu so that he gets a chance to also testify, and anyone else who had signed up. Councillor Clem, is your question specific to Mr. Venti?
It
or?
is.
Okay, thank you, then
Thank
if
you,
you'll go
Madam
ahead.
I'll let Jim step up here any minute. Just let me know.
Well, I can't say enough about what a great coalescing of
nice.
talent and really people impacted by this experiment. Dino, if the city came to you and said, how many spots do you want in which garages? And you said, 3 in this garage and 2 in this garage for your employees.
What structure would I be targeting?
Does that make sense to you as an
Oh,
employer for your employees? I mean, you care deeply about
Yeah,
your employees.
absolutely. I'd probably reach out to my employees and find out where they want to park. To me, it would make sense. I mean, I'm right down the alley from Chemeketa.
So if we had staff interact with businesses downtown or groups that wanted to be part of the solution, then they could say, yeah, I need 5 in this and I need 2 here. And we sort of allocated groups of spaces in the garages for employees and for residents. Does
Yes.
that make sense? Is that kind of what you guys were talking about? Because I love the idea, but I'd kind of like to know what your thoughts are.
My name is Jim Vu, and I guess the statement around that of putting the allocation is there's a supply and demand aspect of it. What we know from the facts are at a peak level, the parking garages are used at 55% as a whole. So I guess if we want to get to the point, we want to cross that bridge where the parking garages are at complete capacity. And the answer is we don't have exact numbers of what that looks like. The process is that we want to create an avenue so that the right thing to do is the easiest thing to do by having employees, residents, and really frequent downtown users see the parking garage as a very viable and great option.
That's great.
Mr. Vu, would you like to go ahead with the rest of your testimony? Did you have 3 minutes worth?
I've got 15 seconds. I'm not going to waste your time. The clear statement is the statement we came together is a group of downtown business owners. We're trying to find a voice that's common ground. These are things that we want to work with the city, and I just thank you for taking the time to allow us to speak and make a testimony of we're representing as much as we can of downtown business owners, and this group is constantly expanding and growing. We're facilitating a conversation and finding a voice so that we can do what we feel is best for downtown and what we feel is trying to take care of our customers.
Right. Well,
Thank
I'd
you.
like to say thank you to Mr. Vu because I know you've spent countless hours and sometimes you've had to trade off time from your own business to spend time on the people's business, the parking issue, and I really do appreciate that. I appreciate the depth at which you've been studying all of this and the conversations you've been holding, and I can tell just from the turnout of people that you have standing there with you that you really put heart and soul into this and good thought, so appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you for listening, and we'll work toward there. We're not there yet. We'll get there.
We will. I think there are a couple of questions for you specifically, but I see a hand in the back there. Yes, certainly. We're sort of suspending the rules a little bit here, but I
appreciate
feel
it.
like I'm still a little bit in control. Is that okay?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm Cecilia Ritter-James, and I represent Wild Pear as well as Acme Cafe. And the only reason why I say Acme Cafe is because I want to give you an example of how the parking has impacted my downtown business at the Wild Pear. We have experienced downtown residents that are using the on-street parking as their garage. They no longer are required to park in the garage or buy permits for that. And we have found one person in particular who has 2 vehicles. So one vehicle stays on the street. It's their second car, their recreation car. So it's on the street quite a bit. Anyhow, what I have found at Acme Cafe is that my lunch business has grown. there. The comments from customers who have said, well, I can't find parking downtown at the Wild Pear, so at least I can come here to Acme. They associate myself with either business, so therefore they're going to expect the same quality of food and or service. So at least they can come to Acme out in South Salem, and we have plenty of parking on the street, as well as our neighbor Office Depot allows us to share parking with them. So I wanted to comment on a question you had asked about allotting businesses, perhaps a certain number based on size of business or employees. Well, there's probably a lot more employees than are spaces available in these parking garages outside of other people that buy, the permits to use them. But perhaps a suggestion could be that a business could purchase at X amount of dollars, pass on that fee to their employees, but it's a pass that doesn't belong to the employee. It's a pass that belongs to the business. So a business that has multiple shifts in one day, they could pass them out to an employee to be able to go use for the first part of the day. When they're done, they can come back and turn that permit in, and it can be passed on to another employee to be able to use for the latter part of the day. So as opposed to, an employee who maybe wants to buy a permit and use it for a 3-hour shift that takes up a space all day. The business, you could cut down on the amount of permits that need to go out by allowing the businesses to use them throughout the day multiple times. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple of hands up. I know that Councillor Benars had a question. Councillor Clausen, I think, has a question first. Councillor Clausen?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I definitely appreciate trying to get people into the parkades, and it definitely brings a big concern to my mind, which is what we've been fighting for the last 2 years, and part of what's brought up the discussion of parking for the City Council, and that's funding of the garages and the parking system downtown. And that's a big struggle for us right now. And we're using Salem, the urban renewal dollars, to maintain those parking garages, which should have been maintained by the parking fund. Typically, we don't want to put in redevelopment dollars and then use redevelopment dollars to maintain the redevelopment later on when it's starting to fail. So I would hope maybe that you guys can have another discussion as you're discussing rolling forward. What does that mean, and what does that vision look like for how does the parking fund become sustainable long term? And I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. I don't know. There's no answer here tonight, but it'd just be an encouragement on my part.
The answer, I guess, in terms of addressing it, Councilor Clausen, is that that is definitely one of the items that we have. That one of our goals as a group is to create a solution that is holistic, recognizing that it has the balanced budget, has to sustain itself. That is clearly a very polarizing topic, and it's one, as we're coming together as a group and finding our identity and finding our voice, is one that takes time. And the answer is, in the same way that you don't know, neither do we. But we want to work toward that goal and know that it is one of the specific items that needs, if we're bringing a solution to you or to the council, is one which does have a balanced budget and is sustainable. Fair enough?
Fair enough. We do appreciate that. I will note that we do have parking permits that are only $20 a month. And the parking permits, of course, start at 20 and go up to, a higher amount depending upon where they are. But I know that our parking staff would be more than happy to work with businesses to help identify where employees could park for the least amount of money if that's an issue, and then also where they can park if they're need to be closer to the business than those $20 permits allow. So we'll try hard to get all that information out to everybody too.
And I think that's the note in our statement that we made, was having a safe and affordable option. An affordable spot that isn't safe, they don't feel they can get to back and forth safely and reasonably, I don't think is a very viable option. So being considerate of the needs to make it a viable, again, making the right thing to do the easiest thing to do.
Absolutely. Now, I think we're on to a question by Councillor Benars.
So first off, just for our city recorder, because you didn't tell us what business you're representing downtown. I think you're one of our newest property owners. Can you tell me where your business is?
The property purchased is 466 Court Street Northeast, the restaurant formerly known as Casey's Hot Dogs.
Thank you. Welcome to downtown. The other question I had, and it's consistent. I wanted your opinion in reference to the 3-hour versus 2-hour versus any other time limit?
3 versus 2, we had suggestions between 30 minutes all the way up to 4 hours, everything in between. Right now, in the purpose of trying to find some common ground between all the business owners, 3 hours is something that most people could agree upon, and I'm not ready to die on that hill quite yet. So we'll pick that topic later and dig down deeper. Fair enough?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now, was there anyone else? I think Councillor Clem had a
Yes, Mr. Vu,
question.
the name of this new business downtown?
The name of the new business is owned by Bernard Mellerby, who currently owns Crooked House Bistro, but the restaurant will be called The Kitchen on Court Street.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure.
All right. Now, there are several other people who've signed up to testify, but if I'm overlooking someone, be sure and let me know if you had wanted to testify when you came down to the microphone with Mr. Vu and Mr. Venti. All right, thank you. I'm going to try to pronounce this name. Is it Nasha Armouche? Oh, thank you, yes. Welcome. And also, I have another name that I'm going to get some help.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am the owner of Macedonia Greek Cuisine, downtown Salem. I don't want to add anything because everything they said, that's our problem, all downtown business. The parking, leave it open without limit, that's really a big problem for the business. Everybody come to my restaurant, they told me we have to go more than 5 times to find parking. Where is the people? How can I find people, they don't find parking? How do I do business? You know, we are almost, we have to leave the downtown because of the parking. It's not, you know, I don't see it, it's very good solution to leave it open for people. You have to have a limit for people to park. And this is our biggest problem in downtown. And for Sunday, like Sunday, I come for cleaning for the restaurant and everything. Even Sunday, most of the places closed. I can't find parking. I have permit in the bag. I bought permit. But I want to park in the street, for example. I don't find parking. Where is the people Sunday, even Sunday? You know, we just asking ourselves. We're trying to help people, to tell them you can park in parkade, but people, they don't want to walk that far, especially older people, you know. This is what I would like to say. There is nothing new. And everybody else having the same problem. We just like to encourage business to stay downtown. We don't want to leave, you know. But more space, you see it empty in downtown. I think this is the biggest problem for here.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony, taking time tonight. I know you worked all day because I saw you down there today, and I appreciate you
try to make
coming.
time. Just I want to see the different. We really like to stay downtown, but we like to see if there is any response from the city here.
Thank you very much. Were there questions of counselors? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. All right. What did you decide this name was? Is this Al Doherty? SME Al Doherty? All right. Well, we'll try again later, perhaps, with that name. Teresa Standish, followed by Penny Castletoni. Hope that's right.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Teresa Standish, co-owner of Bittersweet Boutique, and we're at 321 Court Street, right next to Venti's. We opened up our boutique in August of 2008, so we just celebrated 6 years. And every year we've seen an increase in our sales, you know, in our revenue. We've worked very hard to build a good customer base, build a following, which has not been easy to do in Salem. I'm so sorry.
That's
Each year, our business has grown until 2014. I'm seeing a decrease by 2 to 10% every month. I'm doing everything that I've always done. This month, normally August is our the strongest month after December. I'm 29% down
and I probably won't be able to stay open. I'm not saying it's all because of parking, but when I try to talk to my customers, they say, I love your store. I love that you're here. I love you and Shannon, that's my daughter, but I can never find a place to park. So I just pick something up at Fred Meyer's or, Target. And I apologize, it's really embarrassing. I just want you to know that this parking is not working.
We really appreciate your testimony. I want you to feel comfortable and take as much time as you need, because what you're saying is really important for us to hear.
Well, and like I said, I've seen an increase every single year until 2014. And actually, January was a good month for me. And then February was dreadful, as probably it was for most businesses because of that terrible snowstorm. But then March was down, and then, April and May, and we keep trying to advertise on Facebook more and reach out, and we even lowered prices, just doing everything that we can. And this month is just really hit us hard. And I want to stay in Salem. But if things don't change, I can't. So again, I apologize for being such a baby, but
you don't
thank
need
you.
to apologize.
Thank you for listening.
You don't need to apologize.
So.
Your testimony was excellent. And we so appreciate you coming here and testifying and sharing your concrete information with us. That's vitally important as we move forward to try to make solutions that will work for everyone. So thank you so much for being here. And we really appreciate you having a store downtown.
Thank you.
Downtown businesses are really, really important to the strength of the whole city. So thank you for being there. We hope you'll be able to hold on a bit. I think we're going to be able to find a solution, not tonight, not on the floor right now, but believe me, we really are pledging to rectify the problems.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Penny Castleton, and I have a mental health business in the Reed Opera House, 189 Liberty Northeast. And I'm not going to say anything new here, but I did start down there in 2011 and paid a parking tax, and then it doubled the next year, and then there are no parking spaces. So I'm paying double as a small business what I was paying, and the parking is less. So I did say something new, didn't I? So,
yeah.
And we are the backbone, small businesses, and we're trying to make this happen. And part of the problem when there's no parking in a business like mine is I see people with anxiety disorders and depression, and if they have an anxiety disorder and they've circled the block 6 times,
makes it
right?
worse. Yeah.
I spend the first half hour calming them down from just trying to park downtown. Most of the people tell me it's easier to take the bus. They can get closer to the building with the bus than they can with parking. And so for some people, 3 or 4 blocks might not mean anything, but some people are in therapy because they have just gotten a terrible diagnosis, or they're terminally ill, or something going on with them. They don't feel well. They can't get close to the building for parking. So what's happening is their family members are dropping them off, and then coming back and getting them, and they'll circle the building, look for parking, and sit out there an hour and wait for them. And that's just, I think it's unacceptable. Mm-hmm. So for my patients, I'd like to see that they can actually get some parking near the building. I like what you all have said. And even if we don't have a storefront, a retail storefront, we still have a need to get people closer. And if we work anywhere near in the evenings or near dusk, the safety for women in particular is a concern for me. I don't want them parking 4 blocks away or 5 blocks away and trying to get in for therapy. I think that's all I had.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Benars and then Councillor Clem.
I'm going to ask the same question I had before, but the reason I'm asking it of you this time is because you're not retail. So does a 2-hour or 3-hour time limit make a difference to you, to your business?
The 2-hour did. When there was a 2-hour in place, people weren't circling like they are now.
No, what I meant is that if we instilled a 2-hour versus a 3-hour, some sort of time limit.
I don't know. I think 2 or 3 hours isn't as essential to me in terms of not being a retail business.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
Okay, other questions? Counselor Clem?
I'm
Yes?
sorry. Your customers or your clients that come to your business, do they also shop and eat before they come and after they leave? Do you know?
Yes, they do.
But if they only have, if they're in with you for a certain period of time, they've got a, you know, more time would allow them more opportunity to shop or eat.
Thank you. Now that helps me answer the question. 3 hours would be awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
There we go. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony and your time. Richard Foote.
That's okay.
Welcome, Richard.
Council, hi. I'm glad to be, I'm Richard Foote. I live at 4915 Swagel. I have a business at 189 Liberty in the basement of the, the lower level, the bohemian level of the Reed Opera House, pardon me. And I'm glad to be here on the side of Dino Venti for a change in our last interchange, and we're across the street from each other. The remarks I would like to address tonight about parking are based on some comments I sent to Councilman Bennett earlier this summer. After 4 years with our mobile operation, in April we opened our retail location in downtown Salem. When promoting our cafe at the Saturday Farmers Market, many of our regular customers say, "Oh, I never go downtown, the parking is a mess," or "I used to, but I just can't drive around so much anymore." That's disconcerting to say the least. We do between 4 and 8 times the amount of business per hour at the market that we do downtown. That's not what we'd expected. I've not read the petition or the resolution that created the situation. We're a fairly new business, but I think I could probably get 6,000 signatures on anything that said free, you know, and subsidized, because it's not free. And I think you need to tell the story that parking is not free. You know that because you deal with the $1 here to try and do 2 things every time. Parking's expensive. Streets are expensive and subsidized. The statement by staff at a previous council meeting that the operational parking budget has to suck from the capital budget of urban renewal to repair elevators highlights the seriousness of the situation. Furthermore, expecting minimum wage part-time employees, for example, all the wait staff for most of us downtown, to work for between 3 and 8 hours per month to pay for parking when they can take a chance and hope they won't get a ticket is a little naive. Especially those that work late and have to walk to the top of a deserted parking structure, or force them to use their dinner break to move their car after 8 p.m. I don't know about you, but for a lot of businesses, they're busy then, and to have the wait staff dish out for 15 minutes. Okay, I'm almost done. Personally, I'm in favor of parking machines, you know, the stickers and all that kind of stuff. We've used them for years in Europe. They work. Prepaid, all that kind of stuff. The good thing about parking is it's a solvable problem. Every city has this. They've all solved it. You know, you've done a lot of work on it already. I would assume the staff's capable of studying that best practices and that this responsive council can do something about it. You're really in a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation, I understand. My advice is to tell the folks downtown to suck it up and fix the problem. Because we need the customers to come downtown and shop so those people in those nice apartments above us will have something besides a vacant storefront below their residence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Foote? All right, we appreciate your testimony, appreciate the written letter you provided as well. Thank you very much. Was there anyone else in the council chambers tonight that did want to testify? I see Roger Yost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, friends, I appreciate what Dino and his group were saying. They make a lot of sense for short term. I'm here looking at the long term. We've watched the revenue coming in from renters go down as our tenants leave because they can't afford either the parking tax or to stay in business because there's no customers coming in. Our parking tax revenue that the city has collected since it doubled has gone up from roughly $10,000 for tenants in the Reed to almost $25,000. Certainly the business has not gone up in a corresponding way. My recommendation pretty much follows that of the Leyland Committee that recommended to downtown that you bring in paid parking, and you do it as swiftly as possible after explaining the benefits, which I don't think was properly done, but there are a lot of benefits. We would get rid of the parking tax. That would solve one of the major problems. We would have a better management system instead of having people who are now called parking Nazis going around and having to check license plates. All they would have to do is look on the, on top of the dashboard, say, okay, they're expired. It's the responsibility of the person. And it's so flexible, and now you're experimenting with machines near the city or the state capitol, east of 12th Street. And I would recommend totally that you bring that experiment with a test downtown as quickly as possible. I think if you do 4 or 8 block faces, you'll find out whether it discourages parking or encourages the possibilities that we could do it throughout downtown. So my recommendation is for the long term, as quickly as possible, let's get to it. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Well, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Yost. Are there questions from councilors? All right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming down. All right. Is there anyone else who wanted to testify this evening? I believe, did I miss you? You had already testified.
Yes, but I would like to make a comment.
In addition to the testimony that you've already provided. All right, I'm going to make an exception and allow you to do that. We usually try to really watch the time. Thank you.
I was just answering the gentleman's question if we represented more than just our group. But I know Roger well. We used to rent at the space at the Reed Opera House, and I understand what he's saying. I think what we need is, we do need the short run. You can't do the long-range solution. So we really need to get this short-range solution that we're proposing. And I think each community is different. And although paid parking works in some areas, I think the main goal is to have the survivability, have downtown survive. And so quickly rushing in and getting meters, I don't know if that's going to solve it, because things like that aren't quick. Once you have meters, they're really hard to get rid of. They're much more expensive to put in and out than, say, parking signs. So I still think we need to get the short-range solution that we're proposing and continue to study these things. They don't have to be studied forever, but I recommend no more study. Implement something that's reasonable, realizing it's not permanent.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. Well, I do appreciate everyone who came down and the testimony, and it certainly is going to be helpful as we later deliberate in successive weeks about this issue. I want to take the chair's prerogative and back up for a moment, because under public comment, I really should have asked someone who had come to council tonight to be a part of my comment, and my comment has to do with the National Night Out, which occurred when I was not able to be in town, but I heard so many wonderful things about it. And so I'd like to say, really kudos to the Salem Police Department, to the city staff who worked to make National Night Out such a success for our community. And I wonder if our Chief Moore would like to come to the podium and say a few things about National Night Out. I know I'm surprising you. I apologize. You're usually surprising other people, so.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing. National Night Out is certainly a great event for us. I believe we visited about 130 parties that evening. We had teams of officers and mascots and supporters that went out to all the parties. And I will tell you, it's a very uplifting evening for all of us. And I think it's really important for this community, because when neighbors know their neighbors, they take care of each other, and that's how we reduce crime. And it's also great community relations for our officers. And in light of what's going on throughout our country, I think that is critically important for this organization to be to gain friends and allies and supporters for their police department in this community. So I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And don't go away, because I believe David Dolly is here and would like to make a presentation. So we're going to segue bring David down to make a presentation to you and to others perhaps. Welcome, Mr. Daly.
Hi, I'm Dave Daly. I live at 145 Liberty Street, and in coordination with our Can Do Downtown Association, we had a neighborhood national night out with all our officers and took a group photo there on the corner. And I went around today and had all the businesses and citizens sign a big thank you card that we're going to share over social media. But it's really great. We interviewed the officers on a safety report and how they can reach those officers downtown that we can share over social media. The businesses, the best way to reach the downtown district, gave a report on year-over-year crime, and it's just a great way to keep us in the loop. So, Chief, thank you very much for allowing these officers to come out, and I just wanted to, I know on all those parties, we're just one downtown district, but I know the whole community is grateful for what our officers do in our community and keeping us safe. So thank you. Thanks. You bet. Thank
you. All right, circle back. Our next item is the consent calendar. Councilor Bennett, do you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars to move the consent calendar. Is there discussion?
Madam
Yes,
Mayor,
Councilor Bennett.
yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to run through these real quickly. I have liked Councilor Nanke when he has filled in doing this job, his decision to begin mentioning these. I think at the suggestion of Councilor Rogers, I think it's a great idea. The resolutions tonight we'll be passing include a resolution adopting a council policy relative to allocation of TOT funds. There's no change in it, but we divide up the transient occupancy funds amongst a whole variety of users, including parks, Travel Salem, the various historic houses in the city. It's been a real benefit to the community. We also have a resolution sending a couple of ballot measures for annexation to the ballot. One is on Sweigel Road. The other is on Wallace Road. If you recall, all annexations go from us to the ballot, so we're moving them to the ballot. Our action items tonight include an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Oregon, continuing to work with respite care services. We also are authorizing a grant of $200 to the Hands Across the Bridge event at Marion Square Park. You recall we had a gentleman here describing some of the funding problems they were having. This is our attempt to respond to that concern. This is a Recovery Outreach Community Centers program. We will have, I'll skip that one. That one's just really obscure. Yeah, there's a number of these that get a little obscure. We also will be approving the sale of city-owned property located on Market Street that is the former Market Street pump station. That pump station was offered for sale by sealed bid twice. We got somebody to buy it. It's the next door neighbor, and it sounds like it'll be a good use for it. And we are also going to be amending the purchase sale agreement for the 3.8 acre park parcel, which is, as you recall, that portion of the Boise Cascade development that extends into the park up adjacent to the carousel. There's some more due diligence the city would like to complete, and we'll be delaying that closing date until December 31st.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilor Clem.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to disclose that I had previously worked 3.3E, the park parcel, for the principals for the Minnow View LLC, but no longer working for them. Don't feel that that past relationship interferes with my ability to vote in this matters.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. All right. Thank you. All right. The motion before us, made by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. This evening, we have no public hearing, but under special orders of business, we've moved the item 7D, the parking in downtown. And so I wonder if we start with a staff report on that, City Manager? How do we want to do that?
We do, and Mr. Rex will be delivering the
All right.
report.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilors. Tonight, we're going to give you a presentation in regards to the City Council motion that was passed on August 11th to provide an update to the council on the downtown parking. What we are going to address in quick summary is the three items that are identified as the bullets here, and that's the trends in parking in the downtown, the fiscal analysis for both the general fund and the parking fund, and then enforcement activities related to parking enforcement in the downtown. As a piece of context, though, I'd like to just kind of step back and remind council about the action that was taken in October of 2013, and that's when the council adopted a citizen-initiated petition that modified the Salem Revised Code. That did effectively the four items that are listed on the bullets. And in summary is that they prohibited the installation of parking meters in the downtown. It prohibited time-limited parking except for in the three parking garages, the Marion Parkade, Chemeketa Parkade, and Liberty Parkade, as well as the surface lots. It retained, though, those portions about the prohibition about employees parking on the street, volunteers parking on the street, students and jurors parking on the street, but it changed those hours of operation for that enforcement. So it went from 8 to 7 p.m. and was changed to 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And finally, it put a cap on the parking tax, and that was 2% annually or the Portland CPI, whichever is less. In your staff report, we've identified the 85% rule in regards to parking. The city has been using this industry standard as a gauge, as a management tool to address parking in the downtown from a management approach since 2006. And this 85% rule gets to the issue about when you have that peak hour of parking that's above 85% is to implement management programs in order to create that turnover. And you heard that issue about turnover with the citizens that were speaking earlier. The first piece was looking at those trends based upon your recommendation from the last meeting. And so what this chart does is it summarizes what was in attachment 3 in your packet, looking at the utilization. So the top red line identifies the utilization in the commercial core node. That is a 12-block area in the central part of downtown. And since 2006, that utilization has been above 85%. In the study that was just completed for 2014, that utilization was at 92%, down slightly, about 0.5% from where it was in 2012. The bottom line, the blue line, is the entire parking district in the downtown. And since 2006, that utilization has been consistently above 70%, but as you can see, starting in 2011, that utilization started to increase. Ending in 2014 at 81%. So it's starting to get close to that 85% rule on the previous slide about management programs. Downtown off-street parking and its utilization. This graph is scattered in part, but the telling piece of it is when you look at the trends that are occurring from 2012 to 2014, is that there is a drop in the utilization of the parking garages over that 2-year period. And so when you look like the Chemeketa Parkade has significantly dropped, where we were up about 50%, it's down around about 40%. The Liberty Parkade was right around 50%, it's now down below 50%. The Marion Parkade has trended down, not as significant or as big as an adjustment as the other two garages, We've also included the Pringle Parkade that's just outside of the downtown area, but it is utilized, and it's also seen a reduction in its utilization. In regards to the question on the finances, this slide is an analysis of the general fund parking revenue and expenditures. The next slide we'll get to is addressing the parking fund. The general fund revenue and expenditures have remained relatively unchanged. The increase that you see in fiscal year 13-14, we believe, is attributed to a couple of changes, one being the parking regulations, and two, a stabilization of our parking enforcement staff. We had a reduction in 12-13 when we stabilized that in 13-14. It's also important to note in this particular graph that the revenue and expenditures reflect enforcement costs, but they do not include the general fund costs associated with parking enforcement, such as the court and the finance department. But what we generally this shows is that there hasn't been any real material change in those revenue and expenditures since the change in 2013. The parking fund revenue. As you can see, in the red is the yearly expenditures, and in the blue is the revenues. This fund continues to operate at a deficit, and you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, this does not include the subsidies. So this is a look at it without contributions of urban renewal funds for capital expenditures to the parking garage, or the leasehold fund for operating expenses. One question might be asked, well, why was there not leasehold funds in fiscal year 13-14 and 14-15? That was because we had a need for those leasehold funds to address ADA bathroom improvements in both the Chemeketa and Liberty parkades. We had storefront replacements in the Chemeketa parkade. We also have some upcoming HVAC improvements that need to be done at the Liberty parkade, and then we had tenant improvements. So you may remember we did an adjustment in one of our tenant spaces in the Chemeketa parkade. In regards to the enforcement activities, again, this chart shows the various changes. The parking enforcement staff enforces over 30 different types of citations. Those include meter enforcement, loading zone, 30 minutes, downtown employee violations, residential permit, because they do the enforcement in our residential permit program areas, improper parking, and disabled parking spaces. The process for issuing a citation to an employee within the downtown parking district. First of all, we got to collect the data. And we have to do those observations if they're a customer and if they're parking in the downtown area. Next, then we have to issue a warning to those that we've identified that are employees that are parking on the street. And that warning is kind of an orange form. It lays out the rules and regulations, tells where you can go get to the PAC center and get parking permits. Then we have to monitor those employees to see if they're really working. And some employees may come downtown on their day off, and they're like any other customer. If we identify a vehicle and believe an employee who is working that day, we have to confirm that they are working that day. That could be either one, going into the place of business or calling that business to confirm that that employee is working that day in order to issue that citation. We have to do all of this in order to have sufficient evidence in order to go to the municipal court for that citation to be adjudicated. Next is the issue about employers providing information about their employees. We have requested from the employers information on their employees, their name and their license plate numbers, in order to enter into the system to be able to track, are they an employee, are they working, or are they not working, and going through those protocols that I just outlined. The last time we did the request of the business owners was in November of 2013. We sent it out to over 500 businesses. Our response rate was only 86 businesses, and some of those businesses only gave us names and gave us no other additional data. Some businesses also did not provide it because they have concerns about security of their employees in the downtown area. But as you can see is that the 2-hour enforcement, when it went away, went dramatically down. But we did have increases in the number of warnings and in the number of employee citations that have been issued since the change back in October of 2013. So this slide is one to kind of summarize what's in attachment 3 in your packet. So on the utilization, the retail core node, that 12-block area in the central part of downtown, has stayed relatively constant. As I mentioned earlier, it's gone down about 0.5% from 2012. On-street occupancy has gone up about 10%. Off-street occupancy has gone down 13.73%. So I mentioned earlier the utilization of those parking garages. On-street turnover has gone down 17%. For the enforcement activities, there's been a 227% increase in citations for employees parking on the street, 102% for warnings. We put the information in just about the percentage of businesses who responded, 17.2%, and the fiscal impact for both the general fund and the parking fund have been relative. It's basically been neutral at this point. So this is a summary of what's in your staff report and in the multi-page attachment 3 on the utilization study that was done back in April and May of 2014. Thank you.
I have a question. One of the thoughts that occurred to me, you described how difficult it is in order to compile enough information so that the ticket that's issued could actually stand up in court. And I'm wondering if we have any sort of an analysis as to the number of tickets that have been issued versus the number of tickets that hold a water in court and are actually, fines are actually paid. The reason I'm asking this question is I'm wondering if this is just a time-consuming process that does not, in fact, result in changing an employee's behavior, but simply creates more work for us, sort of like squirrels running in a cage, that comes to no fruition, either financially for us or behavior changing for the employee.
Mayor, I don't have the number on the face value of the citation versus what the adjudicated amount is. That's something we could go back and talk with the court and see if we could get that information. But in response to the other part of your question, just about time, since November of this year, we spent about 3,800 hours, about 40% of our staff time, addressing the issue about employee enforcement in the downtown area. And then another 40% was dealing with collection of coin at meters, and then about 20% went to other enforcement areas. So the issue about identifying employees who are in the downtown and parking does take significantly more time than it does that if you had a time limit. When we had the 2-hour, they could walk by, get the license plate number, log that in, and have the time. You come back 2 hours later, or 2.5 hours, and the car's still there that has exceeded it, and you could issue a citation. To go through the employee enforcement, you got to go through all of those steps that I identified, and so it does take more time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Yes, Councillor Clem and then Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering if staff could help us understand the difficulty in issuing. What actually do you go through to issue a citation? I mean, do we videotape the employee getting out of the car? I mean, can anybody shed some light on the
Yes,
how difficult that
Mr. Barnes, I think, is prepared to. He's in charge of parking enforcement to respond.
Hi, my name is Jeff Barnes. I'm the operations supervisor for the City of Salem, Madam Mayor and City Councilors. Just to summarize what the officers individually are having to do in order to, obtain this information that Mr. Rux explained is, it's hard. It's a very labor intensive, and what they're having to do is take personal observations, and that's one of those that being at the right place at the right time is always a challenge, and what they're faced with is employees that are very smart, very well coordinated, and they have an intentional purpose of trying to benefit themselves. And what they're trying to do is they'll find vehicles in a couple different ways. One is through their handheld unit. We still have officers going around entering data on vehicles to kind of document who's visiting our downtown and how often. If a vehicle is there more than 4 times in 30 days, it flags the officer and says, hey, this vehicle's here. So that kind of raises their awareness. At that point, they'll give them that notice that he was talking about and let them know, hey, if you are an employee, here's some options to park, here's some contact information that you can obtain a permit, and if you're a customer, thank you for visiting downtown. That process continues later on as they continue to chalk the vehicles. If the vehicle comes up again, it will say it's been given a warning, and it's within 30 days. So they put another warning on it, go back, look at the data that we have on that vehicle to see if it is a frequent person downtown, and hopefully there's some information from the employer that was provided that could give us an employee, where they work. Most of the time that's not available. As you saw, we only have a 17% return from businesses. So that relies on the officers to build up their own information database. And the way they do that is just by sole observations. Watch a person park their vehicle, watch the person walk to work. Now you know what car they drive and where they work. Provide a notice or a warning to that person. If they continue to behave that way again, then they go in to their place of employment, confirm that they're working, and issue a citation.
And council, as you can see, it's incredibly staff intensive. It's difficult for the businesses. It's difficult for the downtown employees to have a parking enforcement person come into their place of business and present them with the ticket. It's just this system doesn't work well.
I have questions from Councilor Bennett and Councilor Rogers, and then I think, was it Councilor Benars had your hand up? Okay. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you. I just want to check with you on how you're dealing with downtown residential parking. I was taken by the testimony from the gentleman with the photographic studio and with Wild Pear. I'm familiar, I think, with the gray Jeep. I guess that's the one. Two of them. Where they're parking vehicles for days at a time. And I've had you were through parking staff talked with you about a couple of these. How do you deal with those?
Well, the only prohibition for residents parking downtown would be the abandoned auto ordinance that we have, which is a vehicle cannot remain on a street in the same place for more than 5 consecutive days.
How was it before the petition was circulated, signed, and...
Same regulation.
Same regulation. How did we deal with people then with residents? Did they just have to follow the 2 hours? That's how we kept moving?
That's correct.
So the time limit is what really regulated downtown residents, really, and employees too, it sounds like, in some ways.
Right. It encouraged them to move from one location to another. They may have remained downtown, but they weren't in the same location.
Yeah, okay. Doug, or Mr. Rex, I'm sorry, how much do we spend on advertising free parking in our garages? Do we spend anything? Do we do anything? I thought that was kind of a compelling, I hadn't really thought about it, that you drive up to the Chemeketa Parkade and not really realize you don't have a gate to go through, particularly if you're from anywhere outside of town. We know that the petition circulators gathered about 3,000 signatures from people out of town. They already had free parking. They may not have known it. Is that kind of what's going on out there?
Mr. Rex, did you have something you want to say? And then I have a comment.
It's, specifically in our budget, we don't have a marketing identified line item to go to the parkades. But through information, I mentioned the orange flyer that goes on a vehicle if we believe they're an employee, which encourages them as a marketing way to move to the parking garages. But that is something that we could look at, is a more robust program to be able to market our 3 downtown garages and our surface lots as a location to go park.
And Mr. Wells, I think, has more information.
Maybe I could just add to that. Yes, it's a great question. It's something we're considering. We've come to the same observation that it not only you can drive by the Chemeketa Park gate if you can find the entrance.
If you can find it. Yeah.
It's not clearly marked how you get to it, and we think we could do a much better job with banners and advertising on the outside of the park gates showing this is to the entrance, next right here. Put the entrance, put free parking on the garage, not only on Chemeketa, but all the downtown garages as well, and really make a concerted effort. And we're planning to do that particularly in time to get ready for the holidays, but it may be something that we just need to continue to do as well.
If I could, just one suggestion. We have chosen, for some reason, gold and brown as the colors of parking. I've been all over, and here in this country and overseas, everyone I've seen is blue and white. It is like this universal parking logo, and I wondered if maybe that's part of the confusion, is just not, it looks like a commercial sign rather than that kind of universal sign of parking. I found it confusing.
Yes.
Too. Plus, it's just hard to notice.
Willamette likes the colors.
I bet.
Actually, it was chosen by a group of people who gave us some advice when we were looking at different colors for the signs, but I think you're absolutely right. That's something else we should look
I
at.
can kind of actually explain that because I was on the Downtown Advisory Board when it happened.
did
and
these
staff
colors?
brought that to us. It's not my fault.
Oh,
I didn't vote for it. I took issue with it, and I said we need the big blue sign like everybody else has. And I was told, no, this is an historic district, so we're going to use colors that have to do with history. In fact, there was a lot of debate at the Downtown Advisory Board then between some of us on the advisory board and staff, and the colors came out as you see them, and it's always been confusing. It's never been consistent with what is even in the rest of the city for hospital, the H sign, and so that's the history on that.
Okay. Willamette's crimson and gold, not brown
Yeah.
and gold.
Yeah, we'll have.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Let's see, where were we with the, let's see, I believe Councillor Rogers had a question, and then Councillor Benars.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let everybody know that I'd like to just scream. You know, the Leland report that was referred to, I'm sure the 85% study that we're doing, they taught us how to do that, and that's where we're at today. And it looks to me like from this report, we've just moved the people out of the parking structure onto the street, and that's where the differences are. And the Leland report was there, a long-term study for us to take some action at a certain point in time, and it certainly looks like we've reached that certain point in time. And I'm certainly in favor of short-term solution, and let's get on with that. But we do have to get to the long-term and bite the bullet. And I'll just say that. I wonder when I'm going to get a warning letter when I get a police officer stops me and gives me a warning so I can go hide, before he gives me the citation. This whole thing is so complicated, so confusing. It's a waste of time. We shouldn't even be doing it. And I guess the next question I'll have is if I get a citation and I pay it because I'm a good citizen, and I pay my $12 or $20, whatever it is, that goes into this fund. Is that correct?
Citation revenue goes into the general fund, not the parking fund.
So it's not, and it's same with if it goes to court and they get a citation, if it goes that far?
It goes to the general fund.
And then it's just accounted here? Is that what we're saying?
No.
I guess how does the dollars add up? If we're given a citation for people violating a parking rule and it's a parking district, why wouldn't it come back into that fund?
If I could, Counselor, the parking enforcement staff is paid out of the general fund as well. There's a very complicated process that's built up over several years. When the parking task force looked at this over a year ago, we made a recommendation that we create an enterprise fund that has all of the parking costs and all of the parking revenue in it, so it's more easily available to people, more transparent about what's happening here. But the way it's been set up over time is this, where some of the revenue and some of the expenses are out of the general fund, and then the parking fund has some specific uses in terms of parking garage maintenance or some downtown beautification, a more limited set of expenses that come out of the parking fund.
Well, I'd just like to say, can't we just keep it simple and get it done?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Benars and then Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 questions. They're all in the line with one and the next. First off, when you asked information, you asked the name of the employee from the employer, the name of the employee, the license plate. Did you not also ask for the hours of employment?
No.
I've been told otherwise, but no? Okay, second question I have, one of the concerns about turning that information over was security for the employees. Don't we have a secure database that this stuff is stored in? And is it immune to the public records law if this information goes in?
There's Counselor Bednar's, Dan Atchison, City Attorney. There's probably a way to make that confidential, but unless we were to take steps to do that, it'd probably be open for public records request.
Okay, and then the last one I have, and I'm not sure who to ask of this one, but so why don't we fine employers, or have we ever in the past fined employers for not providing the information about the employees that they have?
It used to be in the Salem Revised Code, and in about 2006, and some modifications, it was taken out of the code.
I can speak to that a little bit. There was a question about the enforceability of that, and when we talked about it more recently, there's still a concern about what do you do exactly if an employer doesn't provide that information? You send them a bill that they've been fined $250, and then what if they don't pay it? What is our ability to enforce that?
So just because I'm going to put some teeth, somehow you have to put the teeth into the rules so that you can collect the $250.
And our question has been, what are those teeth? Are we going to lien their business? Are we going to,
license and you take their license away?
Yeah, again, this is all for short-term solution. If the long term is something else, and kiosks are one of the things that I'm hearing here, but I'm trying to put some teeth. Is there something that we can do as a council to put some teeth into that particular rule so that we can get those names in?
I think, Councilor, what we've heard from a number of businesses is they're concerned about security for their staff. Banks especially don't want to turn them over the names of the people and the license plate numbers of the people who work for them. I think in this day and age when there is identity theft and that sort of thing, people are much more cautious about providing that information. So it's, they've just been, as you can see, 17% have responded. They're very reluctant to provide that information.
I'm a little amazed to hide that they're hiding behind the cloak of that kind of security. I mean, we have a police department that has a whole lot of information. We have other things within this the staff in this government that is secure, and I'm certain think that we could probably keep it that way if that's what we wanted. Anyway, I'm going to push my point. Teeth.
All right, Counselor Dickey.
Thank you. Actually, Councilor Benar's kind of answered my question, but I am really concerned about that low turnout rate for our businesses. And I'm also equally concerned about someone who may have a regular coffee date with someone, and then they get something on their car that says, "We think you're an employee." I mean, that is not very friendly at all. I can't even imagine if I was new to town and I was having, I don't know, some regular meeting or whatever, and, that really, to me, says, well, you're suspect until we, figure out otherwise. So I am really concerned about that. And so then just my other comment I would make in terms of making sure people know where the free parking is. We have another information item that I don't know that we'll necessarily discuss or not, but it talks about the city increasing its social media presence, and there's a great resource that we can use for low cost. Maybe the parking garages can have their own Facebook page or Twitter feed or something. I don't know, but we've got some tools at our disposal that might be able to help with that.
Yeah, well, there are those systems. Yes, Counselor Clem.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rux, Doug, I want to just confirm 4 data points that I got, so maybe this answer can come later. But out of the report that I read, it said there's 432 fewer unique vehicles parking on street downtown daily, and that at a $15 per visit estimated by Echo Northwest, that equates to about $1.9 million less a year.
That is correct.
In revenues to downtown businesses, whether they be retail or office.
That is an estimate that was provided by our parking consultant based upon work that they've done in the Pacific Northwest with other communities, and what that kind of average spend is per vehicle.
So 432 fewer vehicles since we implemented free parking.
That's per day. So you take 432 vehicles times 300 shopping days a year at $15 per vehicle coming and shopping. That's how you get to the estimate of about $1.9 million.
The other three data points are the 85% rule. I read in the report that we were exceeding that in terms of on-street parking. Is that true? We're at 90% plus?
We are at 92% in the central core node, so that's a 12-block area. So basically, go from commercial to cottage, from state to winter. No. Union. Yeah, it's a little south of Union.
State Union.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that 12-block area.
Third data point, turnover is down by 17%, which means to say that people are having that much more difficulty finding on-street parking.
So in that peak hour, in that time, yes, we've gone from 7.17 cars using a space over a 10-hour period. It's dropped down to 5.95. The question then usually comes, well, how does that gauge? What's really good and what's not? 7 is considered to be excellent, generally speaking. 5 is okay. So 6 is kind of in that middle range. But the trend that we've got is that it's going down. So we've gone from excellent to something less than excellent in that turnover.
And in parking structures, we went from 51% overall utilization to 44%.
Yes.
So one of the intents of free parking was to drive people to the garages, or drive them to leave them no other option but to try to find a garage and park there. And that opposite occurred here.
In this situation is with the free unlimited in the downtown areas. What the study shows is we've got a decrease in the utilization within our parking garages, but you're seeing an increase within the entire parking district on utilization, where we're now up above 81%.
Beyond where we should be, which means 432 fewer vehicles. They get frustrated, they can't find an on-street, they don't know or they don't have an incentive to go to downtown parking, and they leave the downtown. So they're coming downtown, potentially, and potentially leaving downtown without shopping or stopping.
That's one summary that can be drawn from the information, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have several counselors with questions. Counselor Dickey, followed by Counselor Clausen, followed by Counselor Bennett. No? Oh, all right. Counselor Clausen.
Just quickly, I have 2 questions. Is there free parking in the Pringle Parkade?
No.
Okay. And then the second question, are Capitol Mall parking meters, is part of that criteria that the system being proposed be weighted for expandability?
It can, yes.
Just curious. I hope that would be a weighting so that we don't get a system that's locked in.
Well, remember when the information from the parking task force was brought forward to you, we had the Capitol Mall area, and then we had the expanded Capitol Mall area. And so that was an area that went from the Capitol Mall along its north side, basically along Union Street, and then we had the area we call kind of the south waterfront area, which is around Civic and over towards the hospital. In the utilization studies that were done for the Capitol Mall, is we found that the utilization wasn't high enough to expand the pay and display, new technology type of approach there. So we just started, and we're focusing just on the Capitol Mall, and then we'll continue to do utilization studies and look at those expanded Capitol Mall areas to see if there gets to a point where they would need new technology in order to be a management tool.
All right, Counselor Bennett.
Thank you. Do you know, do you have an estimate of how many people were paying for parking spaces, garage use or surface parking, that have left that to go to on-street parking because it's free? I mean, can you tell how many of those folks have left?
I don't think there is a big significant decrease in the number of parking permits that we have, monthlies that we have. And I'm looking to make sure that that's true. I don't think that's where we're seeing a decrease.
Okay.
Where we're seeing the decrease is that people are preferring to park on street if rather than come into the garage to shop when they're shopping for
Okay.
free.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Counselor Bennett, you had a question? You just got it answered. Did you have a subsequent question? No, okay. All right, then it was Counselor Bednarz.
Thank you. This has to do with the utilization of the parking structures. How are the monthly permits for the parking structures determined? Is it purely supply and demand? Or is it comparing the parking rates of the private lots to what we have, or what?
It's a supply and demand. So every year, what we recently brought forward to you as part of the budget process, looking at increasing. So each of the 3 downtown garages has a different price point based upon that demand that's there. And well, I'm going to have Cherie Wargren. She can answer that question much better than
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rex.
Cherie Wargren, Downtown Revitalization Urban Development. Up until this year, what we have done is we would go and gather information from other parking lots in downtown to do a price comparison. So the Diamond Lot, we would look at what the Diamond Lot charges. We would look at what Roger Yost charges in his parking lot. We would look at the increase or decrease in demand for the parking garage, and then we would come to you and make a recommendation. Some years we did not have a recommendation because based on that information, it wasn't appropriate to increase it. I think 5 or 6 years ago, we decreased Marion, the permit rates, because we thought if we decreased it, we would have an increase in permits purchased in that, because that particular parking structure is always lower in demand than Chemeketa, and it worked. We did get an increase for that. And then again, we were able to increase the price once that demand justified that we would be able to have people pay an increased price. This year, the Downtown Advisory Board just universally made a recommendation to increase the permits within the district, full-time monthly permits, $2. And that's what came to you through the budget discussion.
So is there any sort of program for a person who may be earning minimum wage, trying to park their car downtown? They're spending, I think it's $72 or $77 in the Pringle Park gate, I believe.
Well,
but is there a hardship, some sort of compensation or a way to adjust for people who can't afford, and yet they work downtown?
Well, the mayor spoke to, we do have monthlies as affordable as $20. There's daily permits, so if you only worked a couple days a week, you could get a daily permit at $5 the day of which you were working. And then there's part-time permits that are different depending on what parking structure they're in, and part-time is 25 hours or less.
Okay, and then the last question I had would be employers. Do employers come to you, or is it just employees? Does an employer come to you where you might sell them a block of tickets where they can transfer it from one employee or another, or is that allowed?
That is an excellent question. I heard somebody comment about that. And for example, Baskin and Robbins in Salem Center. I just happened to observe this, and Jeff Barnes confirmed it. I was on the sidewalk and saw somebody pull into the loading zone, and the person had the Baskin and Robbins bright colored T-shirt on. She ran like, and I was thinking, oh, and then immediately she came back out with a permit. So that particular employer buys permits, and they change with shifts that permit so employees share it. There are a lot of businesses who purchase the permits for their employees.
So there's nothing illegal or wrong about transferring? We have transferability of those permits. We allow it.
Again, somebody fills out and makes the application for the permits.
Okay.
And then they have them as a business, and they allocate them out to the employees that they have in any given shift. But one person, it's not like 5 people sign up for a permit like carpool. You have a person that owns that they're purchasing those permits.
But it can transfer from vehicle to vehicle. That's what I'm trying to get
Yes,
to.
they can.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Counselor Rogers has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we've had free parking downtown, have we seen any difference in the revenue around the Capitol Mall from the metering? Do we have a response for that? what I'm looking at is, are more people that were typically using the paid parking at the mall or around the Capitol Mall, are they infiltrating into the free parking? Do we have a number for that? Or?
I'm not aware that we've seen it. Part of the trouble with us answering that question is that, and I think the council's aware that we have a technology problem over at the Capitol Mall with the meters, and so the revenue that we're getting is not the maximum revenue. Those meters are at the end of their useful life. They jam. People are not putting the full amount in, and this is the main reason that we know that we need to replace that. So I'm not aware that we have any data that could accurately show that. We may have some personal feelings about it, but we don't have anything that could really prove that point. But it's a good question.
Thanks.
All right, are there further questions from councilors? All right. Is there a motion, perhaps? Councilor Clem.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. This is a long motion. You should have copies of it, as well as the Statesman Journal does. I do have one additional bullet to add to the end, so I move to direct staff to prepare and present an ordinance amending SRC Chapter 102 for first reading at the council meeting September 8, 2014, that will continue free customer parking in the downtown district with the following changes. Implement a 3-hour parking limit for on-street parking spaces within the downtown parking district for the 2014-15 holiday season beginning in October and automatically ending on February 3rd, 2015. Second, remove restrictions on the city's ability to manage parking in the city-owned parking lot located at State Street, including the ability to install 30-minute spaces, parking meters, and other parking management tools for that lot. Number 3, increase in the number of 30-minute parking spaces allowed by SRC 102. SRC 102.0545 limits the number of 30-minute spaces to 50. The increase in the number to be recommended by staff. Number 4, removes the restriction on businesses from using 30-minute spaces. This is obviously for loading zone and/or business purposes. Number 5, clarifying that publicly owned emergency response vehicles are exempt from parking regulations when responding to an emergency, and that city-owned and marked vehicles, when in use for official city business, may use 30-minute spaces in loading zones. 6, that staff work with downtown businesses and other stakeholders to develop options to incent downtown employees and residents towards off-street parking. And the last bullet is to advertise the parking in the downtown parking garages as free.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Clem and seconded by Councilor Dickey. Is there discussion? Councilor Clem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fellow councilors, this is a short-term solution. We have the holiday season coming upon us. The trends in the report clearly show that turnover has gotten worse. It didn't get better. Parking in the parking garages has gotten worse. It didn't get better. Given the current trend, these two items are likely not going to change. They'll get worse during the holiday season. I'm impelled by this fantastic group of downtown businesses coming together and recommending that something be done to create turnover so that we aren't suffering from 432 fewer vehicles on a daily basis in downtown shopping and for business. Also, I think it makes sense that we have some long-term solutions to put in place here. We got to talk about parking garages. We got to talk about permits, having to come all the way down to City Hall to buy one. I know staff's working on it, but Councilor Rogers is right. We should have fixed this when we went through processes before, and we didn't. So we've got until essentially February 3rd, if council approves this motion, to get that done. So I think it helps establish a timeline to engage with the businesses, to engage with the citizens, and for us to have some meaningful discussions and finally get to a solution that's better than what we've had before. 2-hour parking in some people's minds is enough for downtown. a lot of people think that it needs to be 4 hour. I think 3 hour is a reasonable experiment, as this is just a short-term solution, but it's intended to keep our downtown viable, and right now it's hurting. And we heard from a couple of business owners about the decrease. I think this downtown business group, I'm not sure what the name is, but led by Mr. Vu, has almost nailed it on the head in terms of a short-term solution. And I'm excited that even more and more businesses are joining that group to help engage with us about what solutions work for everybody, not just one or two businesses downtown. So it's about turnover. It's about parking garages. We've got to solve these problems on a short-term basis and a long-term basis. I would request your support for my motion to solve the short-term problem.
All right. Further discussion. Councillor Bennett, followed by Councillor Clausen.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Clem. I think this is a really good representation of both the testimony we heard this evening and I think the general trend, and your comments, I think, are really well taken. There are really bad ideas, and then there's sort of following up on bad ideas. And I think one of the worst ideas I've seen in Salem in over 40 years of living here was this petition that determined you can have something for free that costs, when you're in a parking garage, $50,000 a piece. They cost a substantial amount when you're on the street, when you could determine the cost of streets. And now we see they're costing us actually a substantial, a couple $1,000,000. How often? How many?
Over a year.
Per year?
Per year.
For downtown businesses, loss of 432 shoppers. This really was a bad idea, but I've got to compliment the city staff. We were forced into dealing with this petition and had to adopt it the way it was written, despite all of the problems you could see coming in it. What I really want to compliment the staff is there was a wholehearted, honest attempt to make this thing work. It just doesn't work anymore. We were too close to overcapacity in parking. If we were at 50, 60%, probably we wouldn't have the downtown we have today, but we were just too close, and it was not the point at which to do some kind of wild experiment with free parking. And I'm really pleased this group of businesses came in. I know a number of them supported the petition. I think they've had a chance to see what this can look like. You know, I think it's a real opportunity to correct and begin to deal with, kind of as adults, deal with parking and come to grips with who pays, how is it going to work to the best benefit of the shopper, which is what this is all about. This is about people coming into our central shopping area and having a great experience, and an experience that they help define. Not wait 2 hours, get a ticket for $30, or 3 hours, get a ticket for whatever it's going to be, or even 4 hours. This is a real chance to define your need. I think this is just going to be a real interesting opportunity. I'm hopeful that 3 hours works. But I think we really need to be prepared to work with this business group and any other group. Hopefully the Chamber of Commerce steps up and participates in this as well, and that we can really talk about what does parking look like? What is the impact of parking on rents? What is the impact of parking on the success or failure of businesses? I mean, there's a whole batch of things at play here. The city's done its part. It's invested money in downtown for 40 years. It has been serious about maintaining a viable downtown. What it and its partners at the school district and Marion County and all of the other taxing districts didn't sign up for was that urban renewal is about underwriting free parking. Nobody signed up for that. You talk to other taxing districts, talk to your schools, talk about the length of school year that's 1 year shorter than in the state of Washington here in Salem, and ask them if they like giving up the several $1 million associated with an urban renewal district that's devoted to parking. What kind of plan is that's not in our strategic plan? So I really thank you, Councilor Clem, for getting us started down this road. I think we've got a ways to go, but I think we at least now have partners that understand what we're talking about. So I'm really looking forward to having a really rich and I think a valuable discussion that will change the nature of downtown for the positive. I'm really excited about this.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think Councillor Clausen had a comment.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you added the last bullet point about advertising the parking garages. I thought that was a great point brought up by the group that was in here. I think that potentially could have big returns for people coming downtown. Also, I'm glad that with this motion it expires in February, which forces us to talk about it again. I won't be here. My successor's behind me. I know he's listening and paying attention. And I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to go on this. And, you know, in my opinion, we need to look real close at those pay-to-park meters, because that's just what it's going to take to get people to circulate and get people into those parking garages and maintain a sustainable system. I just don't see any other way around it. Maybe in February there'll be a miracle cure that I don't know right now. But anyway, I'm all in favor of this. I like the way it goes about it, and hopefully brings some relief right now and still gets the good conversation up here in February again.
Thank you. Councillor Benars?
So I've already expressed this evening several times my concern between the 2 and 3 hour. I am going to support this motion with the 3 hour in it, and I would like very much for staff, and I'm pretty sure they'll do this anyway, come back with a report to tell us how the parking situation has been managed over the holiday season, whether the 3 hour was the prudent thing to do or was the 2 hours. 2 hours is what we had a long time. I was on that committee that put the 2 hour in, and there was a lot of discussion back then about having 2 hour parking. We talked about other times, and one of the things about 2 hours is that as an employer, you're supposed to give your employee a break every 2 hours. At this point, they're going out and using that break to move their vehicle. If you kept it at 90 minutes or some other period of time, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for them to do what they're going to do. I don't know. I still support the 2 hours, but I'm going to go with it. I also would. I understand there may be more to this issue about permits, monthly permits, and the parking structures, but I want to make sure that parking is affordable to those individuals, especially those individuals whose income is basically minimum wage plus probably tips, but they're struggling to find a place to park their vehicle, and that's one of the reasons why they're on the street right now. So I just encourage staff to continue down that road with that, and with people who are living downtown to get them into the parking structures as well. So I'm all for this, where we're headed. I think there's a few things we could add to it, the CPI issue and a few other things that came in the initiative petition, but I think I'll go with this for now. Look forward to addressing it.
Thank you. Are there other comments from councilors? I'm going to support this motion this evening for several reasons. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Councillor Clem for the thought and the time that you've attended to this issue. And as Councillor Bennett and I sat for a year on that task force, our number one goal was to provide the best parking experience that we could for customers as they come into the downtown area. And I think this is a step toward that, and I'm very pleased about that. I'm also very pleased that we did receive such thoughtful input from members of the downtown community. That really, truly has made a difference to us. It wasn't just tonight, but I know our city manager, and thank you, Linda Norris, for the time you've spent. You've all been meeting and talking among yourselves and going out to other businesses. That's tremendous citizen participation. Thank you for that, and I want you to know your voices really have been heard, not just tonight, but over the weeks as the city manager has been working with you. I'm pleased about the understanding of the need for business owners and business managers and employees downtown to be able to stop outside their business, park their car or their van, go in and deliver or pick up or something for 30 minutes and get back into their, the business that they're in. I've always felt very badly when I've heard from downtown businesses who said, well, I was only dropping off my day's product and I got a ticket for that. So I think we're addressing a lot of things in this, and I'm very pleased, and I'm happy to support this motion. All right. Any further discussion on this matter? All right. It was moved by Councillor Clem and seconded by Councillor Dickey. We'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, if people want to have a moment to stretch, we can do that, and then we're going to go right back in because we don't have too much left on our agenda this evening. Again. So we are at the point in our agenda when I remind people that there are items in your packet, information reports, and they cover items 7A, B, C. And so I draw your attention if you have any questions on any of those. See appropriate staff or the city manager. And we will move to the ordinances. I believe we have no first
Mayor, Councilor
reading.
Nanke
Oh, I'm
had a
sorry,
question.
Councilor Nanke, yes?
Screaming in on me there. Yes, in regards to
Yes.
information reports?
Oh, yes, thank you.
On the Fairview Plan minor amendment?
Thank you, 7B.
Yeah, just, I go to the Morningside Neighborhood Association meeting every month, as many every month as I can get to. And I look out and I see windows broken out on these 4 buildings that are going to be taken down, which means it's been raining into them, pigeons have been flying in. We, as community or compliance services throughout the rest of town, we stick pieces of paper on those kind of houses. Do we know what the balance, I mean, because this is taking 4 adjacent units out of the crescent, right next to each other, and so we're over a third of the crescent is being removed or has the ability to be removed and deconstructed with this. Kind of, as I talked with a planning administrator earlier, she said there was some rationale as to why those 4 were being taken and that we may see more down the line. Or,
Right.
if I can just get a
you wonder
brief
what-
description.
What this condition of the remaining buildings?
Yes, and it would be
okay.
nice to actually, if all the windows are broken out and they will just, over time, degrade to the level that they're not salvageable. I mean, we've talked about that with other buildings lately. Some look very nice on the outside and are kept up. We've torn a couple others down in town, and
Right.
so.
Okay, we'll get that information to council.
Right. I do think it might help if there were photographs of the buildings. I've had the opportunity to tour the site and to see those buildings on more than one occasion. And I don't believe that they were in a reconditionable site. I'm not a historic preservationist expert by any means, but I don't believe that they ever were in a condition that once given over to the current Sustainable Fairview property owners would have had the financial likelihood of being able to have those buildings renovated and put to good use. But perhaps some photographs and maybe a tour might not be a bad idea. So that's just something.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't get any better by not having them taken care of and actually having them exposed to the outside elements and
Right.
all the contaminants that come from
Yeah. Yeah.
birds and
Right.
pigeons
That's true.
especially.
Right, okay. Thank you. Councilor Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about 7, I think it's 7A, looking at expanding the city's social media presence. I think this is a great opportunity for the city to be able to reach audiences that maybe we haven't been as effective at reaching over the years as things have changed. I mean, when I read the staff report, I immediately thought of, probably everyone in this room has heard of the ice bucket challenge or someone who's dumped a bucket of ice on their heads. This is something that 2 weeks ago no one heard of, and it went viral by a fundraiser for ALS or whatever, and whether you think that was an effective way to bring awareness or not, it really took off, and it really shows the power that social media can have and the reach that it can have. And so I think that us increasing how we're using it and is going to be a real benefit to the city and to citizens who it's harder and harder to reach. And certainly there are audiences that will not participate in social media or don't participate in it, and we have traditional means to communicate with them. But I really see this, I think about, I had sent someone to the city's website for a city event several months ago, and what they found was a press release, a very well-written press release that got the information out to the newspaper or whatever, but it was a family-friendly kind of event, and a press release probably wasn't the most attractive thing to get, to encourage people to come. A little splash on a Facebook page or something like that might have been a little bit more helpful. So I'm happy to see that we're doing that. And I pulled this up. You all probably can't see this, but this circle here has hundreds and hundreds. These are all different social media websites on here. And so, it's fascinating. There's probably 200 or 300 different ones. And so if we can take 2 or 3 and do them really well, I think that'll go a long ways.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Benars.
I just want to reiterate what Councilor Dickey had just said, plus the fact that I have actually taken the bull by the horns. I have taken out a page on Facebook that is going to be directly related to my work here in City Council. It'll have some of the links. It'll have updates of things that are going. This meeting this evening, right. I was soliciting people to come down and have a conversation. I want to hear their opinions. But my idea is to have a bigger presence, and I truly believe that that's where we're headed with this whole thing, that we have a bigger presence. I'm now liking the 3 of the 4 neighborhood associations that I represent. The 4th does not have a Facebook page, so I can't like it. But I'm trying to reach out. When my constituents ask me what's going on, I didn't hear about it, I want to make sure that they're connected one way or another. So I'm going to continue on my own until the city comes up with some policy, but I'm going to continue on my own to see what I can do. And maybe the city will join me at some point and be able to help us with these media sites.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to proceed to the ordinances. I believe we have no first reading, but we have a second reading. The city recorder, please introduce that and take the vote.
Ordinance Bill Number 1614 relating to a street name change for a remnant portion of Swiggle Road Northeast to Badger Corner Place Northeast and declaring an emergency. Councillor Clem?
Aye.
Councillor Bennett?
Aye.
Councillor Tesler? Aye. Councillor Nanke?
Aye.
Councillor Clausen?
Aye.
Councillor Dickey?
Aye.
Councillor Rogers?
Aye.
Councillor Benars?
Aye.
Mayor Peterson?
Aye. All right, we have public comment now. We have 2 people signed up, David Dolly and Margot Lucas. Mr. Dolly, did you want to testify now, or had what you did earlier satisfy this?
You delivered the chief, Mayor. I was waiting.
You're fine. Okay, that's great.
I can't upstage that.
All right, thank you. All right, Margot Lucas, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank everybody for working so hard to continue safe access for medical marijuana patients here in the city of Salem. We are waiting now for a draft of the ordinance for the rules and regulations for the operating of our industry. And we're looking forward to receiving that. And at this time, I would also like to take just a minute to thank Courtney Bush and all of her hard work that she's put into this situation. And I just want to say thank you personally to her for that. We have, as I said, been waiting for a copy of the ordinance, and so my comments tonight are going to be a little more general as opposed to specific related to the ordinance. Just wanted to point out that when we passed the moratorium ordinance, we did talk about being an example for other cities, and I hope that we can do that here, that the city of Salem will be an example for other cities across this state. And Marion County is operating here in the area, and so is the City of Independence. Marion County has a $200 permit fee and a $45 background check fee. In the city of Independence, they also have no city business license, and they have allowed their dispensary program to go forward with no rules, regulations, and just going with straight zoning that the OHA has given them. So those are a couple of examples of other cities and county, a city and a county in the area and what they're doing. We would like to just ask you to be reasonable and rational and not reactionary in your decisions here. We understand this is not something everybody's dealt with before, and as elected officials, we know that you're concerned about citizen complaints and public safety, but we do want to point out to you that how many meetings we have had that have been open to public comment or work sessions and that type of thing, and that we really haven't had anybody come in here and complain about our industry. And we have been operating in the city for some time now with no complaints. And I see my time is short tonight, so I'm going to try to quicken this up. We do have tremendous public support for medical marijuana, and we want to remind you, too, that we are medical marijuana, not adult use legalization. And we do have tremendous public support. And on the subject of taxes, we do understand that the city is concerned about a right to preserve that tax at the city level, and we do understand that. But we would like to suggest to you that a percentage of the fees or the tax would go to the city's DARE program, because we want people to know that we do support that type of program with the city.
Thank you very much. I have to draw your attention to the fact that your time is up.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I spoke a little long tonight.
That's all right. Thank you for coming. Were there any questions? Just a moment. Don't go away.
Warren was
Yes.
first, or Councilor Bednar's, pardon me.
Go ahead.
All right.
Margot, I know you represent the industry in the local area here. I had a phone call from an individual who was concerned about one of the businesses closing up. Could you tell me, from your knowledge, what's happening within the city of Salem? I think there were 11 dispensaries. Are they all still in business at this point, or what's happening to the industry at this point in Salem?
Well, we have 8 that are operating under the state licensing and the city's moratorium. Those are the people that got their state license before that moratorium date cut off. And there was one other person that continued to operate outside of that moratorium. And then there was another operator that did open up. The police chief has asked those people to cease and desist, and it's my understanding both of them have cease and desisted at this time.
So at this point, I think the thought was that the city of Salem was shutting down the medical marijuana dispensaries. That isn't the fact. Those that have been properly licensed under the current rules and within the moratorium are still allowed to operate.
That is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Councilor Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Nanke and I the other day had an opportunity to tour a dispensary, so it was a very interesting experience. And one of the things that we got to see were the edible, or the medibles, I guess they call them. And Margot, I was wondering if you have any of those with you. I thought maybe you had brought some with you to show.
Thank you, Diana.
We all could have.
I do have some samples of the packaging here so that everybody can see we are not providing packaging that appeals to children. It's been a real concern, and we are concerned about that also. But this is an example of the packaging that goes out of our dispensaries here, and this is compliant with state law. And also this packaging here, which has to be cut with a scissor. I could pull this all day long and not rip this open. And once again, nothing attractive to children and that type of thing. So we're happy to show you those here this evening.
Thank you. And Councilor Nanke, yes.
How fortuitous that you happened to bring those along in case there was a question. I just wanted to remind, in regards to the balance of your remarks, please email us. There's no time limit on email. And/or if it's something that's typed up, it could go to the city recorder, and she could distribute that out as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you waiting so long and being also an active member on our
Thank you. We appreciate all your time.
Thank you. All right, we have no new business to come before this body, and just before we adjourn, I remind several of you, we have now to go into a committee meeting on boards and commissions. So we'll be doing that in the city manager's office, I believe, is that correct? All right, so that's probably the next hour. So yes, Councilor Nanki.
And I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to comment earlier. We did have a Boy Scout here tonight participating.
We did.
To further his ranking, more than likely with some kind of a civic participation merit badge this evening. And
I think he's
I just
working on
apologize
some
that I wasn't
badge.
able to recognize him before they left at the last break.
Well, we did talk, our city manager did go over and talk with him and made him feel welcome in the council chambers.
Wonderful, because it is rather foreboding first time. It's like, what the heck are these people doing down there? And
right, and we
it's
hope
always
next time
nice
he
when we
comes
can-
back that he'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. He'll feel more
Excellent.
comfortable and be wanting to do that. All right,
Thanks.
there's no further business to come before this council. We are adjourned.